I'm Carrie Cates. I'm the programming manager at Lake Travis Film Festival, and I don't actually have an extensive background in horror films. I didn't start watching them until I was in my 20s. I think a lot of it came from being really afraid of the horror movies I watched as a kid. I watched The Blob when I was like 7. Way too early for someone to be watching a movie like that, and it kind of scarred me a little bit, so I really stayed away from it until I married my husband, who is very into horror movies, and I realized this is going to be a big part of my life, and I should kind of embrace it. I started watching 31 horror movies every October. I did 31 Days of Horror, which is pretty intense. It's a great way to just kind of wash yourself over with horror movies and desensitize yourself a little bit. And I really have learned over the last 5 years of doing that to really appreciate horror movies. And I now do a podcast called Scary Movie List Show with my husband, where we talk about, we just make lists of different horror movies that have a particular thread in common, which is really fun. I've really grown to love them. What I love most about horror is that it's this very great space to experiment as a filmmaker. If you think about the history of film, there's so many pieces that we now use in all of their genres that were stolen from Alfred Hitchcock movies. There's lots of shot compositions that were sort of invented in those films. There's a lot of art direction, there's a lot of pacing. Experiment in ways that, we may not be able to do in a drama or something else that is kind of treated differently. So we're really excited about the horror films that we're going to be screening this year. It's a really, really solid block of movies that are very different from one another, and it's very exciting to be putting them all into one block and getting to experience them all together. It starts out with a film called Terrible Old Woman, which is a short based on the H.P. Lovecraft story Terrible Old Man. And it's a home invasion movie gone awry with all the Halloween vibes that you can possibly cram into a short film. From filmmaker Troy Fortenberry that does a really great job of setting the tone for the entire shorts block. Schrader Thomas is coming back again. If you came last year, you might remember his film Cheap Devils. But this year's festival, he's bringing even more intensity with his latest short, Loose Ends. Loose Ends is a guided murder house tour, which brings us more than just the home's evil history. Lynn Sullivan's Good Neighbors is a tale of a struggling artist dealing with her demons inside and out. It's loosely based off the story The Shoemaker and the Elves, and like some of the best fairy tales, it weaves metaphors for being a good neighbor to all life around you, while also having some amazing creature effects and creepy moments at the same time. Next up, writer-director Kelly Horan has a fresh take on the Alone in the Woods with a serial killer movie for us that's not only ethereal in only a way that Kelly is capable of, it's definitely left me with a distinct feeling that I'm not alone out here in her newest short, Between the Trees. When filmmaker Dan Rep decided to tackle the film Cutter, he said he wanted to ensure that all of his characters were totally fleshed out, all while dealing with the monsters of their subconscious. So when paired with his collaborator, Lindsay Young's desire to not just look at what makes people jump, but what makes people hurt, it makes sense that the body horror flick that ensues is both intense and psychological, with imagery that will burn into your brain. And finally, Tara Dickerson's Enjoy Your Stay is an anxiety-driven experiment in thriller filmmaking, with beautiful lingering shot compositions reminiscent of early voyeur horror. You find yourself at the edge of your seat, unable to look away, even if you're still peeking through your fingers. So what's great about having a horror block at a film festival that's not entirely horror-based is that if you don't, first off, you're leaving out a ton of amazing filmmakers and amazing films. But what you're gonna find at Lake Travis Film Festival is that we have kind of a community that circles around this particular block of films. So we've actually kind of reached it out. We have a genre block as well that's going to be playing on Sunday, which you should definitely check out, and it has some of the creepier stuff as well. But definitely try to make it to this horror block, because what you're going to find there is some of the most rowdy crowds. People are very into the films. You're going to see some alumni come back, and they keep bringing back scarier and more intense and more challenging films every single year. So it's really fun to see them grow over the years and kind of get to know them. You're also going to find a lot of collaborations that happen. And so you see this across the board at the festival. We have a lot of filmmakers who will see somebody else's work and gravitate toward it. And next year they're submitting a film together. So we're really looking forward to seeing what happens with this. It kind of ignites a spark in a really beautiful way. And it's one of my favorite screening blocks. I think for Lake Travis Film Festival, what makes a really good horror short and what we tend to gravitate toward in our programming are shorts that bring something new to the table. Whether it be some sort of imagery that's very difficult to forget, or a story that's so twisted and messed up that you have to see how it ends. All of the shorts that we programmed are ones that, maybe they take a second to get started, but once you're in it, and you're going to maybe, again, be looking through your fingers to try to finish it, but it's very exciting to have this kind of diverse group of films in a block that are all doing something completely new that I've not really ever seen before. So advice that I have for aspiring filmmakers who are thinking about diving into the horror genre is that you need to get a camera and you need to get out there and start shooting right away. Horror is a great open space for filmmakers to, again, experiment or try new things. Usually a really raw, new filmmaker can make a name for themselves in horror quite quickly. You have to do a little trial and error at first sometimes, but you can definitely get there. And we get a lot of first-time filmmakers at Lake Travis in the horror genre, but if you even think about big budget horror films, a lot of those directors are first-time directors. So it's a really great space to get your feet wet, but also be able to tell some stories that are going to make people feel in a certain way. And if we think about art as really something to make people feel and evoke emotion, being scared is one of the strongest emotions and probably one of the best ways to dive into storytelling. So if you're a horror filmmaker, you should definitely come out to Lake Travis Film Festival, even if you don't have a film in the fest. The reason for that is you're going to find a lot of people like you who are very excited to talk about horror. And as we know, us film buffs love talking about movies. So this is going to be probably like Christmas for you, or better yet, it's going to be like Halloween for you. So definitely come out, get in the mix, start networking, see what other people are making, and just get excited and let that spark light up in you as well.